Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to REI's weekly webinar. It's exactly 12 o'clock. The noonday gun is fired here in Cape Town, and we're live. Great to have you with us. Please tell us in the chat box where you're joining from. I'm Neil Peterson, your host and moderator for today. I'm the founder and content-in-chief of Real Estate Investor, South Africa's leading independent property investment platform. Since 2007, REI has been the go-to resource for property investors, landlords, homeowners, developers, and real estate professionals. And today is the final of 5 webinars in 2025, running to the end of November, as we unpack the real shifts shaping South Africa's property markets heading into 2026. And today's session is proudly powered by Knox Cape Town, a leader in the short-term rental space. And our theme for today is monetizing the Cape Town short-term rental wave, and in fact, just monetizing the short-term rental wave. We're going to be talking pricing, PropTech, and regulation shifts. So we look forward to a great conversation. So you're going to get straight into the signal, not noise. We will unpack where real yield is still hiding. We've got the experts here, so we also look at how prices are evolving, how PropTech moves performance. We've got the PropTech experts here, and whether regulation is shaping or strangling growth heading into 2026. So if you have any questions anytime, then you just post your questions in the Q&A box. There's a Q&A box on the right, not the chat box, so we can pick them up clearly and address them during the session. And of course, we've got our 3 guests here. They're 3 leading voices in the short-term rental space. So let me introduce you to them without further ado, starting with Richard Marshall. He's the founder and CEO of Knox Cape Town, a leading short-term rental operators in Cape Town. Richard, do you want to give a shout out to the audience here? You just have to unmute yourself, so just to remind you.
Yes, thanks very much for the introduction, Neil, and thanks for having me on the webinar. I'm looking forward to chatting about short term, which is an industry we're deeply familiar with and have been doing for the past 20 years in Cape Town.
Fantastic. Yeah, we look forward to your insights there. And then secondly, we've got Moran Goldboim. He's the co-founder and CPO, Chief Product Officer, Boom, and their PropTech and AI pricing automation platform. And you're sitting in Israel right now, Moran. Where are you sitting?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, just visited Cape Town last August on the Scale Convention, which was great. And yeah, what we're doing in Boom is basically all-in-one solutions for the vacation rental industry, which is AI driven. So we invest a lot in AI and integrating AI capabilities into property management software. And I'm leading that front, so happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Fantastic. Great having you, Moran. And we look forward to your insights. So we've got Miguel Martins, last but not least. He's investor and co-founder of STR. He's also an investor operator. So he plays in the markets, and he also understands short-term regulatory advocacy through STR, of course. Welcome to you, Miguel. Always good having you on board.
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me. I'm sitting here in Schlange in Durban at the moment, and I've just come off a panel at the KZN Tourism Think Tank, where we're talking about and driver renewal within KZN Tourism and how short-term rentals participates in that strategy. So, yeah, really interesting conversations having had today.
Okay, great. So when we talk about the regulation side, we hope that you can share some more insights there from your discussion there. Great. So I think, gentlemen, thanks for joining. Let's jump into the session today. I think, Richard, let's start off with you. I mean, you managing one of Cape Town's largest short-term rental portfolios. As you said, you've been 20 years in the game. So maybe you could give us some insights as to where are you seeing the strongest demand and yields right now?
It's interesting because the demand is increasing across the board, but it's still very much a seasonal market. And that seasonality is least impacted on the Atlantic seaboard and the City Bowl. So traditional tourism areas, similar to the hotels, the most popular areas are certainly the Atlantic seaboard through the City Bowl. Although we're seeing more and more growth in outlying areas. We're seeing Hart Bay is becoming popular. Certainly the southern peninsula areas like Noordhoek, Kommetjie are becoming popular. And obviously, if you look at the short-term rental marketplace, Cape Town's well known for having, I believe, in excess of 18 or 20,000 active Airbnbs now, and they really cover the entire Cape Metropole from the Southern Peninsula through to Somerset West and up the West Coast. But our experience is certainly that the least seasonal areas continue to be the Atlantic Seaboard and City Bowl, although good demand growth throughout the area.
Okay, great. So, I mean, there's no two ways about it that Cape Town in particular is, I mean, 25, I think it's 25,000, and you mentioned 20,000, which is quite sizable, I think, in worldwide. So we're definitely on the map as far as short-term rentals. You've been in this game for 20 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very popular destination. And if you think about what makes a good destination for a short-term rental, it is a place where people want to spend an extended period of time. You know, I personally still enjoy a hotel when I'm traveling somewhere for 1 night or 2 nights, but where short-term rentals really come into their own is in areas where people want to travel either in groups or where they want to spend an extended time in an area. And I think the Western Cape delivers that in spades. Cape Town is a fantastic long-haul destination where you can easily spend 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks without running out of things to do, without getting bored, and enjoying the climate and the fantastic lifestyle that we have here. So I personally think Cape Town's one of the premier destinations on the planet for short-term rentals.
Excellent. Great. So, Moran, I mean, you providing valuable PropTech as a short-term rental management service. Maybe share some insights on your tech, and maybe from a data and tech lens. I mean, maybe you can share what current booking patterns, maybe a little bit of occupancy analytics reveal about the Cape Town short-term rental market and where it's heading. I mean, Richard uses your software, right? You just have to also unmute yourself, right, Moran? So just a reminder.
For sure. Thank you for that. Okay, so basically, I'll start by saying that all the data that I'm going to share is based on our basically our internal data, and it's limited to the characteristics of the partners we are working with in Cape Town. So beside obviously the seasonality, which Richard mentioned, and perhaps a very strong characteristics of a wider booking window, meaning like people book ahead and kind of it's more like a planned vacation that we are seeing it. I actually went ahead and tried to pull some data from our software with regards to Cape Town. And again, like this is the report that was composed, so it's on top of around 900 properties, and it kind of listing and breakdowns, first of all, like from a distribution and bedroom configuration, the percentage. So we are seeing obviously the tendency of smaller properties to begin with as a majority of the portfolio. Stay duration and distribution. So we see something that is quite unique to the market, which is like, as Richard was saying, week stays and extended stays in a large percentage of the reservation. Also, kind of supporting Richard's observation with regards to occupancy around Camps Bay and Clifftown and Sea Point, like the more closer to the shore instances are getting higher occupancy. We can also see like the ADR distribution across those regions. So yeah, really nice statistics from year to year. We see the growth. We see also the pricing spectrum and the breakdown between budget segment, mid-range, and then going to premium and luxury. So yeah, lots of interesting data, basically kind of supporting Richard's observations and perhaps also somehow infected by Richard's and team portfolio, we can see this data here. So hope that it gives you kind of some understanding of the characteristics.
Absolutely. I think, Moran, I think a lot of that data is gold. I mean, for somebody like Richard and Miguel managing a portfolio, there's a dashboard of everything you need to do. So thank you for that. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest on that because that's how you can track and manage and monitor your market. So thank you for that. So Miguel, I mean, you've got more of a national viewpoint, and you've also got a portfolio both in Johannesburg and Cape Town. But from an investor's perspective, what signals tell you that the Cape Town short-term rental market is still investable from now into 2026?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. And data is so important, right? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there isn't holistic data where we can compare over time, etc. We take it from where we can get it. If we look at Stats SA is showing us that tourism continues to grow in South Africa with a very strong emphasis in Cape Town. And yeah, it's not just national tourism, but also international tourism, which is split into what's coming out of Africa and what's coming beyond Africa, Europe, the US, etc. So we still see that growing. A lot of that growth, though, is going to Cape Town, to the Western Cape and Kruger, the Kruger Park to be specific. So when we attend the tourism conferences with the Tourism Board of South Africa, the Tourism Business Council of South Africa, TBCSA, of which you remember, they give us that data and they show us that's growing. Unfortunately, we don't see the same growth happening from a tourism perspective across likes of Gauteng, KZN, etc. The growth is a lot more muted. There's growth, but it's a lot more muted. What we do see is that the likes of short-term rentals, very strong growth in the Western Cape. We see that anecdotally. There is also growth, across other provinces, but those are that demand or that supply of short-term rentals is going to where the tourists are coming as well, and that's why there's a concentration point around Western Cape, around the city of Cape Town.
Okay, excellent, great. So, Richard, I want to bring you in. Obviously, let's talk a little bit about pricing and yield management. I mean, we saw in Moran, he had a whole lot of, what it costs per night, etc. Very, very valuable information. How are you approaching pricing strategy to, defend margins? I mean, we've got rising costs, we've got softer seasonality in some areas, and yes, we will get to the regulatory effect later, but so how are you approaching that pricing strategy? Just unmute yourself again, Richard, just a reminder.
Yeah, 100%. No, I think pricing is a fascinating topic in the hospitality industry in general, right? Because yesterday's unused inventory is worthless. So it's absolutely critical to make sure that you get your pricing right. And, it's absolutely critical in what's a very seasonal market to ensure that you're getting your premium when there's high demand, and that you're selling your beds at the appropriate price when there's low demand. So, the old days of published rate cards where a hotel would say, I've got a high season rate and a low season rate, and put it into a brochure and ship it off to travel agents, a year in advance, those days are absolutely long gone. And the name of the game now is very much around dynamic pricing. It's as an industry, it was pioneered by the airlines, and as you know, when you're sitting on an airplane, what the person to your left paid and what the person to your right paid and what you paid can be completely different numbers. And that's very much the approach that's kind of filtered down into short-term rentals now. And it requires having a platform like Boom to enable it. If you're simply going to use a platform as your one tool, to use an OTA's smart pricing, as they call it, you're going to be left far behind, because the OTA's interests are not necessarily aligned with yours. They simply want to have a booking come through their platform, And if you're self-publishing your stock onto the various different platforms, your ability to change pricing is very, very, very limited. So we found that, what's very important is to get software in place that helps you look at your pricing and actually to have a very proactive approach to looking at your data, looking at your occupancy, looking at what the market's doing, seeing where every single property fits in terms of its market cohort. So if you're looking at a 2-bedroom property in Sea Point, what you're wanting to look at is, what is the median price for a 2-bedroom in Sea Point? What's the 25th percentile, 75th percentile? How do I believe my property ranks, and where shall it be priced appropriately? And it's half art, half science, but it certainly requires the right tools and the right data to help you do it well. But ultimately, your ability to price is determined by your guest satisfaction, right? So you give yourself the best possible chance of getting the right rates and getting the right occupancy by ensuring you have the right guest reviews. And that's all based on providing the service, the cleaning, the maintenance, the check-in, the check-out, and ensuring that your guests are actually getting a fantastic experience in your properties. So yeah, it's a very broad topic.
Absolutely. Valuable points. I think it's that you've raised there, Richard. And Moran, I mean, I want to talk just from the software perspective. If you look at pricing as well, how does Boom's AI-driven pricing differ from traditional dynamic models? Because we saw your software there and it's very useful per bed, per night, etc. And with Richard's model that he's factored in, maybe just tell us how that differs from the normal traditional ones. You just have to unmute yourself as well, Moran. Sorry.
We are going to do it over and over for you.
No, but that's good. We're blocking out outside noise, so I get
Never
it.
happened to me, but yeah,
we need
like
to hear you. It's all good. All
always
good.
time is the first. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, on Booms, what we are trying to do is take a 2-layer approach. The first layer is providing you as a very professional host who knows your market, the right knobs to basically adjust pricing according to specific variables. For example, like day of the week. So how do I price my Friday versus my Sunday? Or a seasonal uplift or deflation, occupancy-driven yield rules. So if my portfolio occupancy is higher than 80%, we need to do something about price. Holiday premiums, night-based dynamic pricing. So we provide all of those knobs, but all of those knobs are really hard to change and adjust over time. And this is where AI comes to place. So AI can basically read the entire portfolio data and adjust those knobs very effectively based on market data, based on competitors' data. So we actually get some also the computation data from various sources. This way we can create to the AI basically the 2 factors that it needs. On one hand, all the information. On the other hand, the ability to take action. This way we can create a very dynamic and very effective pricing. Again, lots of it is kind of specifically with AI is in development and in the lab. And actually, yeah, like lots of our partners, not lots, but some of our very trusted partners in Cape Town help us with those efforts.
Excellent. Great. So Miguel, I mean, when you look at short-term rental pricing models, I mean, how do investors decide what yield actually justifies a risk? I mean, are we seeing investors finally pricing in compliance? Because that's a big thing now. And also cost of tech, because we need to use this tech when evaluating your return on investments.
Yeah, so it always comes down to the numbers, right? But you also got to understand the context of the different investor types out there. So I think the likes of so Richard and the type of investors that he'll work with, and the types of properties that they'll work with. I think the margins that are available to invest in the tech to enable effective ROIs on those properties are quite different to maybe margins where an investor has got a studio or a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom apartment as opposed to a multi-million rand villa. So I think and this is a conversation I often have with short-term rental hosts, whether they're hosting their own properties or co-hosting for investors, for property owners, is the tools that are available are relative to what's affordable, what makes sense for that type of property and the portfolio they're running. But ultimately, it does come down to having good, sound pricing principles. The pricing for high season, low season, shoulder seasons, orphan days, pricing for weekends, midweeks, etc. There has to be an element of pricing strategy that comes in no matter where you are. And those short-term rentals operators that are coming into the industry without thinking hard about these things, they may be getting into trouble, because this industry has evolved. It's no longer an easy industry to get into. You have to have your wits about you. You have to have some skills and some knowledge on these important business aspects.
Okay, excellent. So let's talk a little bit about the tech. And you've touched on it, Richard, and of course Moran is the tech guy, so he's Mr. Boom, and you're using that. But let's talk about what technologies or systems have generally improved operational efficiency for Knox, maybe not just added complexity. I mean, you've mentioned Boom, and maybe you can add them again. But is there a point maybe where too much tech starts eroding the guest experience? Because you said that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think when I look at tech, it is possible to run a very simple vacation rental business without tech. And quite a lot of people choose to go that way, where they simply list on usually the largest OTA in the business, which everyone knows, and they simplify their lives by simply working on one channel, trusting that channel can deliver the guests for them, and run it simply, and it can work. Although obviously it's good for simplicity, but it does put a lid on the kind of yield you're able to generate, and it makes you very, very vulnerable, when all of your eggs are in one basket. So from our perspective, by far the most important decision to make as a property manager is your property management system. This is the platform, which handles your calendar primarily, and your pricing. And essentially, it's the tool that enables you to interact with the rest of the environment. That will usually have a channel manager. So when we talk about the specific tech, they're often combined. The different PMSs provide different services, and often you'll have one PMS that fulfills various different functions. But the primary things you need are a PMS, which handles your calendar and ensures that it distributes it out to the marketplace, whether that's the online OTAs, your own website, etc., and ensures that you don't get any double bookings, because that is really something that you want to avoid at all costs. That then builds onto the other tools where we've got huge value from. I would say dynamic pricing is one. We discussed it in your last question, but the ability to price appropriately is incredibly important, because as I said last night, inventory is worth nothing, and you don't want to let your property go for too little in the peak periods. Then short-term rentals is a very simple business in that, it's simply taking care of houses and checking guests in and out. But it's incredibly complicated in that it's distributed. Essentially, what we're trying to run is, a hotel, a 1,000-bed hotel, but it's spread out over 250 separate locations. So that creates an enormous amount of complexity. And in order to address that complexity, and in order to try and ensure that we're providing a consistent high level of service that brings guests back again and again, we need to have a very good task management system. And typically that task management system needs to be integrated with your property management system, because there's certain tasks that are going to happen, with every check-in. Let's say, I want to make sure that the sun lounges are out with pool towels on them and the umbrellas open, or just, the simplicity of ensuring that we're doing a pre-arrival clean, or ensuring that we're checking that there's sufficient electricity in the meter and that the hot water's been turned on. That type of thing is very, very simple to do, but you need a system to ensure that you're doing it consistently at scale. So that task management is incredibly important. And then I'd say guest communications. And I think this is where the potential for too much tech does come into play, because this automation of guest communications, I believe, is very, very important. But you don't want to lose the human touch, and you want to make sure that it's used appropriately. But we've had enormous success in terms of creating a system that allows for guests to get quick responses. You know, you want your confirmation messaging to be going out the second someone books and pays. You want them to be given their arrival instructions at the appropriate time. And when they're asking a question, you want them to be responded to very quickly. And as we know, hospitality is a 365-day-a-year business. It's 24 hours a day. Your guests could be in any time zone when booking and when sending messages. So having a guest communication tool that allows for a certain level of automation is very important, because it allows you to make more bookings and allows you to ensure that your guests stay happier. So I don't necessarily think there's a level of too much tech, but you obviously have to be sure that it's configured correctly and that, you know, there is always a human available at the end of the day when needed. Because if you've got a guest who's locked out of a house or who has a burst geyser in the middle of the night, you know, ultimately a human still needs to deal with that, no matter how good your automated communications are.
No, absolutely. No, thanks for sharing that, Richard. I think you brought up some incredibly important operational issues there, and yeah, 365 days a year, 24/7. So, Moraine, let's talk about tech and automation in terms of, you know, adoption, but also some operators you find are drowning in dashboards. And I mean, you know, how can they simplify integration across platforms and tools? And maybe you can share an ideal short-term rental tech stack. You know, what does that look like maybe for like a mid-sized operator?
Yeah, I think with regards to operators, the challenge, as Richard was saying, is starting around managing 15, 20 properties. This is where things becomes to fall apart with regards one man trying to juggle everything with Excel sheets and lots of paperwork here and there. And as basically Richard was saying, we are looking at the core aspect of the business as like PMS, channel and distribution, operational management, all the financials, owner management, all the guest experience and communication, upsales, and such. So what we've seen till today is lots of best of breed solution, meaning I'm doing guest experience and I'm the best at this one. Okay, I'm doing operational management and I'm best at this one. With the age of AI and consolidation, and also a lot of AI-driven development, which we are getting into very, very quickly, we are seeing, from my perspective, what I'm seeing is kind of the best of breed approach moving away. We're going to see more solution which are consolidating many aspects together. This is critical for AI functioning. So basically what AI needs to function really well and help you with managing your business is, first of all, all of the relevant data. So AI is based on context. If you don't give him context, he's going to guess. And when AI is guessing, this is where you get a bad result. So first of all, it needs to have like all the consolidated data. So if AI is having a conversation with your guests, you want him to have access to your automation. You want it to have access to your calendar. You want to have access to the next reservation, which is coming. So, and similar way to the operation, but everyone from its own perspective. You need to have your business connected together, tied up together. And with those type of best-of-breed solution, usually you get a very isolated system that is not talking to the other system very well. So when I'm looking at it, I'm seeing like a consolidated system, like we are building in Boom, like very similar mindset, where AI not only can get the data, but can also do actions. So if a guest complains, you can open a service call for the operational management. And if the guest is saying, okay, don't come while I'm not here, I'll be at the home between 4 to 6, he will know how to adjust it and adjust priority. So this is the mindset we are working with on kind of combining everything together, allowing the next generation of AI to start helping you more and more, managing more and more pieces of your business.
Okay, great. So lots of moving parts there, but we gotta keep our hand on it, and if we don't have the right tech, it'll end up in big trouble. So Miguel, I mean, you've also implemented tech in your own properties. How do you evaluate what's worth adopting versus the hype, and which tools have had the biggest impact on your bottom line or guest satisfaction, which is an important criteria?
Yeah. So STR held its annual short-term rental conference in July, and Boom was one of the exhibitors, and I had the opportunity to sit with Moran and the team to really understand it. And the problem in the space, well, the problem. So if you look at the life cycle, when you come into the short-term rental space, you're probably using the likes of Airbnb or Booking.com to manage your bookings, to manage your calendars, guest communication, etc. And that's okay for, as you build a portfolio, if that's what you're doing. At some point, you start looking at other tech providers, dynamic pricing, maybe enhanced communication. There are several property management softwares out there, and it's very easy to get overwhelmed with what's available. And as you speak to other operators, maybe a little bit ahead of you, who've already implemented tech in their space, you really start getting pulled in different directions. What's critically important? The first thing is to understand what it is you want to accomplish as a small portfolio manager. What do you want to accomplish? Tech is just an enabler. Be clear on your vision, where you're going, what you want to accomplish, and what you want to achieve with the tech, and then go find the tech. And not just the tech, but the team behind the tech that's going to help you achieve that. And then my second suggestion is don't bring on tech for where you are. Bring on tech for where you think you're going to be in the next 12 to 24 months. Because bringing on tech for where you are, you might actually outgrow that tech. And the conversation I had with Moran and the team, and when I've also gone and consulted with Richard and the team at Knox to get their insights, is absolutely look at where you're going, build for that, and find a partner that can grow with you. And this is a conversation we have with a lot of our members and other short-term rental operators in the industry.
That's excellent. I think there's some good advice there. Thanks for that, Miguel. So let's talk about regulation and compliance. And Miguel, you did mention the SESTA conference in July, which I was also privileged to be there as well. And really good, deep conversations were had there. And so Richard, from your perspective, and obviously you also one of the co-founders of the SASTRA as well, I mean, how are you managing new compliance requirements while maintaining profitability? Because that's important. And this new regulation, could actually do you think it could professionalize the market in a positive way? I think we looked at international, what's happening overseas. So Richard, just unmute. Oh, sorry, I just reminded you.
No problem. Look, at this stage, I think it's probably still slightly premature to talk about regulation, because we're still really waiting for the industry or for the government to inform us what regulations they intend. So what we know, what we've been in discussions with various stakeholders, and there's talk of increasing the rateability of a short-term rental. So If a property is a permanent short-term rental, the intention from a City of Cape Town perspective is for it to be charged commercial rates as opposed to residential rates. And I can absolutely understand the rationale behind that, and I understand that simply changes the numbers from an investor's perspective as to whether or not they're now making sufficient yield. So I think it may impact some of the micro units with low valuations most, as they as residential property ratings have the threshold, so it will more than double the typical small properties rates. Larger properties will be closer to double because they're obviously much higher municipal valuations. But from that perspective, I think it simply changes your investment decision. In terms of other regulations, I think it's a good idea that there is a register and ensure that participants are taxed fairly. We are fully compliant when it comes to tax and paying VAT, etc. So I think that's good to level the playing fields, and I understand why other participants in the hospitality industry would also want to see that there is a level playing field from that perspective. The other kinds of compliance requirements that we're currently dealing with are primarily dealt with at a lower level, so at a sectional title level, at an HOA level. And I believe that, often these things work best at the lowest possible level, rather than looking at some form of national regulation. I believe the further down we can push that to deal with things at a municipal level or even at a sectional title level, that works well. And from that perspective, what we try and do is automate the collection of the required information as much as possible to ensure that the guest experience isn't impacted too heavily. We have several layers of vetting required. But yeah, I think really it's simply a case of ensuring that we are collecting all the necessary information as required by the regulators and ensuring that we're communicating it. Personally, I'm hopeful that there isn't any nonsensical or draconian regulation. The world has seen quite a lot of talk around over-tourism. There's been a lot of talk about short-term rentals, changing affordability dynamics. And although obviously it has an impact, I believe that, in those markets where short-term rentals have been banned or severely impinged, it hasn't led to the desired outcomes in terms of a reduction in property value or an increase in affordability for local residents. And really what it's done is, severely impacted the industries that are adjacent, the other restaurants, lots of the small businesses that were supporting those industries in places like New York. So yeah, I think we wait with bated breath to see what regulations will come out. From the initial conversations we've had with various people involved in government, I believe that the right decisions will be made. I think short-term rentals can be an incredible driver for growth and for employment. It's a funny industry in that it's quite a large industry that generates billions of rands of revenue and employs hundreds, probably north of 100,000 people in the country, but that has a very small voice. And that's exactly what SASTRA, the Short-Term Rentals Association of South Africa, was established, which I'm sure Miguel will talk to try and give a little bit of a voice to that industry, because I believe we can be a real force for good in terms of employment and in terms of tourism. But yeah, it needs to be regulated, and we need to ensure that it's done in such a way that it works in a larger community.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that. I know, Moraine, I know it's not your sort of forte, but, just from a PropTech standpoint, I mean, how do compliance and data privacy laws affect short-term rental platforms and automation tools? Maybe you got some examples in European examples or other markets that you've operated in.
Yeah, so basically, obviously, there are like the the overall regulation in Europe. So if we are talking about GDPR and privacy and such, so from a software stack positioning, it's really important to work with certified partners and work under, the limitation or the specification of those laws and regulations. So that's something we need to do on kind of a continuous basis. Aside from that, as you were saying, there are from time to time, as this market segment is getting more mature, we get more regulation. So I think just as an example, we've got the DAX 7 taxation regulation happening right now in the UK. And whenever those things are coming, we are working with our, first of all, partners over there to understand the exact impact, to understand, what actually do they need in order to implement it, by which date, so that as a platform we can be compliant, but also provide the service that our customer needs. Sometimes, specifically with such type of markets which are running really, really quickly, we see the tendency of regulation trying to chase basically and adapt. And we are trying to be the best partners that we can on that regard as well, just to make sure that we can move forward the business. Yeah. That's in
Okay, excellent. Great. No, perfect. Thanks for that. So Miguel, okay, I know you're sitting there in the Oyster Box, Durban, and you've just spoken about tourism and the growth of tourism and that kind of thing, because this whole regulatory thing, I understand, sits with the Department of Tourism. So, and you, as one of, Sastra's co-founders, I mean, and maybe you can give us a hot off the press update to where we stand on upcoming municipal or national short-term regulations.
Sure. And actually the conversations evolved quite significantly over the last 2 or 3 months. So I manage 5 city WhatsApp groups where we have hosts, largely small 1 and 2 listing type hosts, and hosts are helping each other with the day-to-day operations, guest issues, cleaning issues, housekeeping issues, etc. And when we talk regulation, this is when everyone kind of really gets concerned and where's it going, and is my small business safe? Because 80% of hosts out there are small and micro enterprises or one-man shows, and this is a side hustle, but an important side hustle for them, so incredibly important. So as Richard said, the Department of Tourism brought out their white paper at the end of last year. The white paper looks at reviewing how tourism works in South Africa as a whole. And 2 pages in that white paper was dedicated to short-term rentals. And they talk about regulating short-term rentals. We've engaged at several workshops with tourism, but we actually haven't heard much from the Department of Tourism and the regulation that they are thinking of implementing or proposing for some time now. In that white paper, they refer to Paris and London in the white paper, which has 90-day caps. They also refer to the likes of Greece, which has levels of tax layered onto short-term rental operators in that country. So the biggest unknown is around the Department of Tourism. But where the conversations evolved has been our interactions at a city level. Richard also mentioned City of Cape Town. We've had several workshops with the team there, and they're looking at this from a zoning perspective or property use perspective. And City of Cape Town have released their zone or their tariff proposals for next year. And in that, they define short-term rentals as being commercial use. And so this is actually evolving in terms of or figuring out exactly how they're going to implement it. But the direction where City of Cape Town's going is that a property used for short-term rental will have a commercial use added to it. Not necessarily a rezoning requirement, but the invoice they receive at the end of the month will be one that looks at a commercial tariff. When we've gone and had the same conversation with Johannesburg and Tshwane, Pretoria, they are in very different places. Of course, the City of Cape Town is a focal point for short-term rentals. We mentioned that. Not as prevalent or as widespread in Gauteng. Johannesburg are still trying to understand, what's their approach and what's the direction, and they're looking closely at this. Where in Tshwane, same, also having a look at this, but they have some very specific ideas of the legality of short-term rentals in certain properties and in sectional titles. So other cities, other significant cities, still trying to figure out exactly what their direction is. And these are conversations we're having. And as Sastra, we arrive there, we are informing them what a short-term rental looks like, who these owners are and who they're impacting, and try to ensure that what comes out, and there will be regulation that comes out, that enables the industry, professionalizes the industry, but doesn't negatively impact the industry. And that's really our core focus at the moment.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And lot to actually digest there. What I want to do now, we don't have a lot of time. I want to deal with the questions first from the audience so that we give them the opportunity to deal with them. And so I want to obviously deal with them first, and we can, have a wrap at the end. But I think the first one from Lebu, and I think it's for you, Richard, because and it's almost a rhetorical question, I would think. Is Cape Town the best short-term rental city in South Africa? And are these short-term rentals mainly on the coast? And so I think, Richard, I'll give you that opportunity because obviously, I think the numbers show, if we had to look at those numbers, do you want to comment on that?
I would certainly say yes, it's the biggest market. Best is a very subjective thing. It's my favorite. It's the only market that we participate in as Knox. And in terms of the distribution of where the short-term rentals are in Cape Town, it's very much skewed towards your Atlantic seaboard and CBD areas. Yes, you'll find short-term rentals peppered throughout Cape Town, although a lot of those statistics are also based on people who live in a property and rent it out for a few weeks over Christmas and New Year's, which is very, very common in Cape Town. If you look at your full-time short-term rentals, hospitality products that are professionally managed, whether it's done by an individual or by a management company, whether it's really a hospitality investment, those are predominantly on the Atlantic seaboard and City Bowl. So very much towards the coast, towards the central areas.
Absolutely. And then he's also added, and I think, Miguel, you might have some thoughts around it. What is the outlook on the Strand Gordons Bay area, which is also on the coast, but it's obviously, more the south coast. He says he feels it's undervalued. This is from Lebu again. I don't know, your comments there. Richard, I know you're very focused, but Miguel, maybe you want to comment on that.
So I'm a Joburg boy, based in Johannesburg and manage in Johannesburg, but also manage in Bloemfontein and Cape Town. So I have the privilege of seeing both sides of it. And my comment to that is that short-term rentals are everywhere. I think some areas will have different seasonalities. Some areas will obviously have different price points and levels of demand. Yeah. And wherever you do look to go into, it's about, and unfortunately, there's no central data point that says this area is great, that area is less. There are some stats and data that you can get off some of the softwares, but there's nothing that gives you that final answer. But it really is about understanding the area, understanding what your competition looks like. But ultimately, are you enabled with the right training, skills, tech support that is going to help you to be competitive in that space?
Okay, great. Thanks. I think good answer there. Okay, I see Roger's asked a question. He's directed it to Richard, but I don't think it's Richard's question. I actually think it's your question, Miguel, and it's related to rental arbitrage. Okay, so he says, what are your views on rental arbitrage, and would you encourage it in South Africa or Western Cape? And I understand, Miguel, that's what you're doing. And maybe give some reasons, please. I know you're doing, you've got owned units and you're also doing rental arbitrage. So maybe just explain, just for the audience that don't know, what is rental arbitrage and the difference between the two.
So in short-term rental management, you get three types of models. You get the model where I own the property and I host the property, so the own model. You get a model where Richard and Knox focus on, which is the property management, where I'll manage other owners' properties, and I'll charge a fee for doing so. And then you get rental arbitrage, which is I will go and rent a property as a tenant. Then with the landlord's consent, I will sublet the property as a short-term rental. In that way, the landlord is secured in that they'll get the monthly rent, and they have comfort and confidence in that. And really, my risk as an operator is to ensure that I make sufficient revenue over and above that to be able to pay my monthly commitments to the landlord, electricity, water, housekeeping, etc. I myself, I have owned properties in Sandton in Johannesburg, and I do rental arbitrage in Bloberg, so I get to experience both models.
Okay. And so one of the questions was also related to that was, does South African regulations regard short-term affect rental arbitrage at all? And if so, how badly? Do you want to comment on that, Miguel?
So it really depends on the agreement you have with your owner, with either your landlord or your owner. Traditionally, if costs, from a rental arbitrage or an owned model, if costs go up, I will be impacted as a host with that directly. If I'm managing a property on behalf of an owner and costs go up, or those costs are part of the overall running costs, and the commission usually is charged over and above that, so it impacts short-term rental property managers less so. So ultimately impacts the owner. It impacts everybody, but it comes through in different ways.
Great stuff. I think nicely shared there. Moran, I want to bring you in over here, just talking about the future of short-term rentals and tech and the role of tech. How do you see AI automation and data analytics reshaping revenue management and guest experience, certainly in the future in the next 24 months? Because I see tech is playing more and more of a role. Doesn't matter. It's coming in. We cannot use, as Richard said earlier on, we need to have that contact with with the guest. But how do you see it?
So actually, what I think we're going to see is a whole new game with regards to tech. It's basically going to be think about ChatGPT for your business. So a conversational system you can actually interact with and chat but based on your data, and not just getting your data, but actually also being able to perform action and work for you. So I just want to kind of share last example of our conversation on AI, and what I ran here is just basically the questions for the webinar. Basically, the report that you showed at the beginning was also produced on the fly from the system. And here I've asked him to do kind of a market analysis for Cape Town, and he kind of broke it to active number of portfolio and bedroom segmentation, metrics by quarter, like covering the high season and breakdown. But what I want to take you is actually to the last section of the report, the market direction and the takeaway, because I think it's very relevant towards Cape Town. So we see professionalization in the market. We see like the technology dependency as we were talking about. Something that is more specific is around segmentation clarity. So we see luxury and budget are winning currently. And channel sophistication. So we see more capabilities around going into multi-channel, but like this is kind of the level that we are going to see technology interacting with us. So kind of more on the strategical part and taking the day-to-day activities from you. So in a nutshell, I gave kind of a complete talk on Scale South Africa last month about this entire thing, but essentially one system, not a million screen, but one screen that you are just talking and interacting with, and is working for you for all aspects of your business. So this is where I see kind of direction going from a technology standpoint.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Thank you for that demo. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I can't believe where the time has disappeared. I'm going to ask each one of our panelists to give their final wrap. You've got plus minus a minute just to give your final thoughts. Richard, the way forward. Maybe you can give some advice and maybe just a way forward on the short-term rental market and where it's going from a pricing PropTech, regulation shift, or maybe just a summation of something you can leave, something that they can take away. So, Richard, do you want to give us your final thoughts?
Absolutely. Thanks, Neil, and thanks for hosting us today. I think what I would say is that Cape Town has a fantastic, I believe, absolute advantage from a short-term rental perspective and from a tourism perspective. We're a wonderful city, a fantastic lifestyle, incredible weather, incredible food, and very well located for Northern Hemisphere Europeans to travel to. So I believe that the kind of foundation is there for there to be a very good long-term run in short-term rentals. That said, the market currently is a very hot market. When you hear every third person talking about an intention to buy an Airbnb or a lot of purpose-built developments targeting that market with micro units, I believe we are in a hot part of the cycle, and that's reflected in pricing of properties being sold. It's reflected in rental prices in the market, and speaking specifically to Roger's point around rental arbitrage, it's a great low capital model, but effectively you're taking on a long-term liability for short-term revenue. So it's something which you have to be very cautious about doing, and you have to ensure that you've got the right margins and breaks in place for yourself. But generally, I would say I'm very bullish on the market. I think it is hot. For someone who's wanting to enter the market, make sure that you have a very good understanding, not just of the brochure pricing, but speak to someone who's been involved in the industry for longer than 3 years, because that 3 years then starts to factor in your wear and tear, your replacements. When you buy an off-the-shelf property, it's beautifully furnished, it's easy. Your first reviews are great, but 3 years in, you've gone through the cycle. You've probably seen demand come up and down. At some point, you may have had some guests who've damaged your property. You may have had to deal with some of the less sexy, less enjoyable sides of short-term rentals, and you'll have a much more balanced and nuanced idea of what it takes to operate and what it takes to generate a good yield over a longer term. So I would say, but generally speaking, I'm very much in the pro camp, and I think that it's got a good long-term prospects.
Great. Richard Marshall, he's the founder and CEO of Knox Cape Town. I think a great way to end. Thank you very much for your input today. Richard, Moran, your final thoughts, your parting shots to the audience.
So first of all, thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
Actually seeing in South Africa and Cape Town specifically a very uniquely forward-thinking market where we have strong local partners which are ready to innovate and move forward. And that's quite unique. So we really love the collaboration and mostly the energy and connection over there. And yeah, from my perspective, the main takeaway is see how you adopt technology and AI to help you grow and manage your business more effectively. We are living history. We are living a change that is happening. Just be aware of it, mostly. Thank you.
Wonderful. Moran Goldboim is the co-founder of Boom and also the CPO as well. Thank you for joining us, Moran. And last not but least, Miguel, you got the last say over here. So you got the...
Thanks. No, Neil, first of all, thanks for having us back on the channel. This is a really important platform to educate prospective investors in this space. Short-term rentals in South Africa is definitely evolving. I think where it was 3-4 years ago and where it is today, or maybe 3-4 years ago, it was COVID, maybe a bad example, but where it was a few years ago and where it is today is fundamentally different. What is supporting us and what is against us, the headwinds in place are also quite different, regulation, etc. I think it's still a fantastic market to be part of. I think it's growing like hell, and approached with good sense, good ideas, a business mindset. This isn't about chocolates on pillows. It's about so much more. And really ultimately wanting to put a great product out there, a great experience to guests, and then manage everything on the back end. That's what it's about. So want to encourage, if someone's looking to getting into short-term rentals, look up ourselves on the panel tonight. Look up SASTRA on sastra.org.za. There's a lot of information on our social media about getting it and doing it professionally. Thanks.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you. Great way to end there, Miguel. So once again, I just want to thank our team, our panelists who joined us today, to Richard, to Moran and Miguel. Thank you very much for your valuable insights. I thought it was a very deep conversation. And if anybody wants to connect and reach out to our speakers, please, email us either at info.rei.co.za. There is also a link over there, REI Contact Us page, or even directly we can put you on to any one of the speakers today, which we're quite happy to do that. So please reach out, and we will. The conversation continues as we watch the regulation and how things move in the early new year alongside SASTRA, which I'll be working alongside the team over there, adding value. I've already had conversations with the Deputy Mayor of Cape Town, who I want to bring into the SASTRA conversation. So I hope to bring that in when we're talking regulation, that we can do this thing together. Thank you all again for being with us today. Stay invested, stay connected, stay collaborative, and let's keep building stronger together. I'm Neil Peterson for REI alongside Richard of Knox, Moran of Boom, and Miguel Sastra and Inkasa. Great having you all together. Signing out. Until next time.